Hey, welcome back to Gold and Blue today, everybody. If you are a college football fan, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. That is all we do here every single day. And don't forget to send gear to represent your team and yourself to be a part of my background forever. All you have to do is send your gear to P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. I knew this was going to happen, and let me be perfectly clear. I'm not happy when I'm right about a program's demise. I'm really not. But I knew this was going to happen. In fact, you know what? Hold on. In the preseason, I predicted Arizona State to take a big step back. Why? Because Herm Edwards was under the gun. He had a lot of recruiting violations, and it was under a period where recruiting violations was upped even more. I'm talking about the COVID year. And he had some recruiting violations during the COVID year, so that made him even worse. Some players were transferring out of Arizona State, and whenever I say some players, I'm talking about the big names of Arizona State. They were transferring out of Arizona State. So I had this feeling. It wasn't a sneaky feeling. It was an overwhelming feeling that Arizona State was going to take a big step back this year. Well, that's exactly what's happened. Herm Edwards was fired yesterday after 3 games into the 2022 college football season. Most people were saying he was not going to be the coach for 2023, so this isn't a total surprise, but the timing, it's a little bit of a surprise. I did think he would finish the 2022 season. Arizona State got a win over FCS Northern Arizona 40-3, but then they went on the road and lost to number 11 Oklahoma State 34-17. I actually thought they were more competitive than what I was expecting them to be, but they came back home and lost to Eastern Michigan 30-21. That was enough. They have fired Herm Edwards. Arizona State was actually successful under Herm Edwards. He never had a losing season there. Never took the next step, but wasn't a bad program under Herm Edwards. But that NCAA investigation with the recruiting violations, especially being in the COVID season, everything in the COVID season was accelerated as far as violations. So now Arizona State is looking for a new head coach. I predicted that Arizona State was going to miss a bowl and probably have a losing season. So it looks like that's probably going to happen. Here's what the rest of their schedule looks like. They get number 13 Utah at home. That's probably a loss. At number 7 USC, that is a for sure loss. Number 18 Washington, they're looking really good. That's probably a loss. Get your bye week. At Stanford, maybe you can squeak out a win there. Then at Colorado, that actually should be a win. Colorado is terrible. You get UCLA at home, probably a loss. At Washington State, definitely a loss. Oregon State at home, probably a loss. At Arizona, probably a loss. So we're looking at a 3, maybe 4 win season. It's as bad as what I was expecting. So where does Arizona State move on from here? Well, there's a lot of names they can look into. In fact, just yesterday I heard about Bronco Mendenhall, who retired from coaching, who was the coach of Virginia. He's actually looking to get back into coaching. I think he could be happy on the West Coast again. Arizona State might be a perfect gig for Bronco Mendenhall to make his comeback. That would be a great hire. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Bronco Mendenhall ended up being the next Arizona State head coach. I think he's high on the list, and it's a high probability. What about the defensive coordinator for Ohio State, Jim Knowles? It would be a great hire, but I don't think they're going to be able to pull that one. What about the Oklahoma State defensive coordinator, Derek Mason? Also a great name. Not sure if they would be able to pull that off, but a much better chance than Jim Knowles. How about Jackson State's Deion Sanders? No, that's just not the right place for Deion Sanders. If Deion is going to make the jump up into FBS, it's going to be a bigger name than Arizona State. No offense to my Arizona State subscribers. I know there's many of you out there. What about Tom Allen from Indiana? Yes, they had a 2-10 season, but overall, Tom Allen has given Indiana one of the most successful stretches in their college football history. Wouldn't be a bad hire. Might be a little bit surprising, though. What about Mike Locksley, the head coach of Maryland? He does have Maryland heading in the right direction. That would definitely be a name for Arizona State to consider. What about the head coach for Kansas, Lance Leopold? And Lance Leopold has Kansas looking really good. I think Kansas is a lock to make a bowl. And who knows, maybe they make a push towards the Big 12 championship. I have heard of crazier things. However, I think when Lance Leopold makes the next step, it's going to be to a higher brand than Arizona State. What about Clark Lee from Vanderbilt? No, he hasn't had all that much success, but for Vanderbilt, it's not bad. It's a name to consider. Not a great hire, but considerable. What about Oregon State's Jonathan Smith? Now, that makes a lot of sense. He's a West Coast guy. He's having a lot of success at Oregon State. Oregon State is a very dangerous team in the Pac-12. But I think he's happy at Oregon State, and I'm not sure if Arizona State could give him enough money to draw him away from a cushy situation. I think Jonathan Smith is not on the board for Arizona State. What about the coach for Wyoming, Craig Ball? He's had some success at Wyoming, and especially with the limited resources, I think he could make a splash for Arizona State. However, he is getting up there in age, so that's something to consider. What about Dave Clawson from Wake Forest? I don't think that's going to happen. I think Dave Clawson is bought into Wake Forest. He likes his job there, not worried about money. I think he's staying at Wake Forest. The head coach for Air Force, Troy Calhoun. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's not that far away. You're staying on the West Coast. It is a bump up, and it would be a considerable pay raise. And he's having good success at Air Force. Air Force is a contender in the Mountain West this year. That wouldn't be a bad hire for Arizona State. What about the head coach for Fresno State, Jeff Tedford? Jeff Tedford has brought Fresno State football to the forefront. I think he's a great head coach. That hire would make a ton of sense. Staying out on the West Coast, I don't think Jeff Tedford is 100% loyal to Fresno State, so that would be worth pursuing for Arizona State, and I think he's a good head coach. What about the head coach for Marshall, Charles Huff? This guy is recruiting at a Power 5 level at Marshall. He's a good head coach. They just beat Notre Dame a couple weeks ago, and I know that was a bad Notre Dame, but still, that's a great win for Marshall, and this guy is winning some big games for Marshall. That would be a great name for Arizona State, and I think their recruiting would jump considerably. What about Scott Frost from Nebraska? I mean, he was just fired, and no, he didn't have great success, but man, he was so close. So close. Most of his losses were by one possession, but that was the problem with him. He didn't know how to win one-possession games at Nebraska. But we saw the very first game that Scott Frost didn't coach Nebraska this year, and they got blown out. So maybe he's a better head coach than we realize. I don't know. And the competition in the Pac-12, not as strong as the Big Ten, so maybe he could have success at Arizona State. Something to think about. What about Iowa State's Matt Campbell? Matt Campbell is an underrated coach. He was a hot name a couple years ago. He had a down year last year. They're expected to have a down year this year, but we'll see about that. But if you consider the history of Iowa State, I don't care if he wins the Big 12 or not. He has done miracles at Iowa State. Iowa State has had an all-time worst football program in college football history. So what he's done at Iowa State is nothing short of a miracle. Matt Campbell is worth pursuing, but I'm not sure if he would leave Iowa State for Arizona State. I'm not sure how much of a jump, if any, that would be. What about the coach for UCF, Gus Malzahn? He has had success at the Power 5 level. Now, he's come out and said he is loyal to UCF, so I don't know if you'd be able to grab him out of UCF, but it's at least worth a try. Then the top two names that I'm interested for West Virginia. The first one, Hugh Freeze at Liberty. The dude knows how to win. Yes, he had some issues at Ole Miss, and maybe that would cause Arizona State some hesitation because that's why Herm Edwards is fired. But it looks like he's cleaned up his act, and he just wins no matter where he goes. Hugh Freeze is worth pursuing. And then finally, Tom Herman, the former head coach of Texas. I think it was a stupid reason to fire Tom Herman. The Boosters and Tom Herman didn't get along. Look, he had Texas turned around, had a 10-win season, slight step back to 8-5, then 7-3 in the COVID year, literally one play away from going to the Big 12 championship in that Iowa State game. So it was a stupid reason to fire him, and Steve Sarkisian had a 5-7 year in his first year at Texas. Tom Herman is still a good head coach and is worth pursuing for Arizona State. Y'all let me know in the comments section, what names do you think Arizona State should pursue, and who do you think ends up being the new head coach of the Arizona State Sun Devils? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.